Okay, you're good.
At this time, I'd like to call the meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council Audit Committee for August the 22nd to order. Machine is open for roll call. Let the record reflect that all members are present. Mr. Duke is here representing the Internal Audit Department. Mr. Blink is a guest here this morning, and he is also in attendance. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Blink to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You belong.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here this morning. We'll move on to item number 2.
Discussion of the 2020 to 2021 risk assessment.
This time I'll
Okay, this assessment, as you know, has been something that I've started working on throughout the year. If you take a look at the narrative, I believe that I sent to the committee members, that narrative breaks down the risk assessment, and it's dated January 31st of 2020. That is the longest period of time that the risk assessment will be outstanding. I should have this at the beginning of January so that everybody's going to know what proposed audits or audits that we're going to do for 2020-21. I'm going to change up a little bit from what I did last year. I'm going to ask the committee to approve the proposed audits as well as the parish president. So we're going to try to get everybody's buy-in on the proposed audits, and if there's any audit that someone does not agree with, then we can sit down and discuss it and either come to an agreement as to take it out and replace it with another auditable activity. And so really, if you take a look at this, if you go to the table of contents and take a look at the item number 24, page 9, it talks about the risk assessment. And then 25, page 9, if we take a look at that, let's see if I can scroll down here. It talks 24 titled risk assessment. And the sources, I just thought I'd talk to y'all a little bit about where the information comes from. It comes from interviews with management. I am going to talk to everybody that I can talk to that's willing to talk to me about and try to get their input. Office of Legislative Auditors audit reports, I'll take a look at those to see if they have anything in there that would cause the risk to go up or would highlight an activity that needs to be audited. Non-reportable conditions, the same thing. Chart of accounts, I'll look at that. Budgets, I'll look at that. I'll look at the financial statements. And I'll also look at the standards, governmental auditing standards, controller standards in the United States, and the Institute of Internal Auditing standards as well. And then what we do, we identify the auditable areas, which I've already identified. I may have to update those as 855 activities currently. We'll take a look at those, and I will apply a risk factor to each of those based on dollars at risk, size, liquidity, transaction volume, quality of controls, my judgment, complexity of the transactions, and the time since the last audit results. And then after that's done, we do a ranking decision, mathematical ranking, and we come up with, then we do a sort on that ranking, and it'll give me my 12, 13, or 20 activities for those 2 years that we'll put on the proposed list. And then 29, the Schedule 4 will be the proposed list. I'll send those lists to the audit committee, as well as discuss those during a during a meeting, as well as send it over to the parish president. I'll meet with him, we'll talk, and whatever directors or anybody else wants to be in that meeting, we'll sit down and review those activities, and we'll get input, and we'll decide, if we're going to approve it as is, or if we're going to make some changes before it goes out. Okay, that's a brief status of the risk assessment.
So, Mr. Duke, what I'm looking at here is that this is a systematic procedure based on scoring and other criteria as to how we come up with what audits that we are going to be performing during that period of time.
That's correct.
So it's not something that we just grab out of the sky and decide this is what we're going to do.
No, it's mathematical. And, when you look at dollars at risk, you include that. I give that a 0.25%. The size, liquidity, the transaction volume, and once you have those percentages, those factors, then you multiply it by, the first, say, 1 through 5. And, a 1 is low risk, 2 is low risk, 3 is medium risk. Then the higher you get, you multiply that, and then you add them all up, and you get a weighted average. And then at the end of the day, you do a sort on that worksheet, and it sorts it by weighted average. So the higher weighted averages that we've determined will be at the top 20 or whatever, and the lowest will be at the bottom. And I choose from the top 20. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get information based on, I'm going to get input from everybody. So that input from everybody will go in to this weighted average. That's theoretically the way it's supposed to work, and that's the way I hope it works. But there again, what we'll do at the end of the day, we'll all get together, look at it, look at my worksheet, see how I obtained the weighted average, and if anybody has any problems with it, then we can adjust it at that point in time. But we don't want to get into a situation where we try to keep as independent as possible and as much of bias, I guess, so to speak, out of it as much as possible. There's always a little bit of bias when you deal with human beings, but we try to keep it as low as we possibly can.
Okay. I think it's important for people to understand how we come about these audits,
Right.
So they don't think that we're cherry picking or that
Exactly, and that's the whole purpose. You're right, that's what I'm trying to do.
that way it's pretty clear. They can look at this
Yeah.
document, they can understand it and see that
Right.
there is
And-
much.
And I really think the meeting with everybody helps. Everybody looks at it, we talk it over, and at the end of the day, we come up with what everybody considers to be a rational, independent group of audits to do. That will benefit Plaquemines Parish.
And I like the idea that you've presented about the parish president signing off on it, and so
Yeah.
we're all on the same page when
Exactly.
the plan moves forward as to what will be audited in that period of time.
Exactly, yes, sir.
So there should be no surprises, and
Nope,
everybody should be kind of coming together to do just what you said, make sure that we're doing the best for Plaquemines Parish.
exactly, that's the key. Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions from the table?
Yes.
Ms. Newberry?
So, y'all said y'all came up with this,
Got you. You're on.
I'm on, okay. Y'all came up with this last year and adopted it last year. So I guess my question
Right.
is, do you have something on paper to show us why these, in order the way they are? So what
Well,
kind
the
of risk
order,
assessment did you do compared?
What happened with this particular proposed audits was that when I got here in 2017, I had been here for a month or so. I needed to put out a risk assessment audit plan. So what I did was I met with all the directors, and we all got together. I proposed those audits that you see based on my personal judgment at that time, based on what I had seen in the past. I went over it with every one of the auditors. They looked at it, they had a few questions, but at the end of the day, they all agreed to it. So what I did was I went forward with that because I needed to get something, I needed to do some work at that time. I had just got here. But that's not exactly how I would have wanted to do it. although I did feel like it was independent because I had everybody together, everybody got to look at it and ask questions. So we did the best we could at that time. But this one is going to be a lot more systematic and mathematical, and it's going to be the way it should be done because I have more time and I've been here for 2 years now.
And I guess my question is, we keep getting hammered by other council members and some community citizens about the recreation department. It is one of the millages that the administration is addressing
Right.
to the community. So I guess my question is, would you think that would be an important department to move up because of that issue? Maybe we can get a little bit more clarity before we even pass this on.
Yes, I do.
You know,
I think so. I think we should.
That's my question.
I think we should. At the end of the day, let's take a look and see where all of these fall, and then we can sit down and discuss it again, I think. I think that's the way to do it.
Thank you.
And one point of clarification, you said that you sat down with all the auditors. Did you mean the directors?
Directors, yes. Did I say auditors? Okay.
Because I want to make it
All the directors.
Yeah, I want to make sure that it's clear that
Yes.
you just didn't come in and jumped into a list that you made up without having
No.
input from the administration, the
No,
directors.
no, we did not. We met with,
Consensus as to-
now there was a couple of directors that didn't show up, or at least one, I think I recall, didn't show up, but everybody else did.
Okay.
So do you think we need to get back together with the new directors that we have here now and the new administration?
I will be doing that, yes.
All right, so this is an evolution process, and it's improving as we move forward.
It is,
So-
correct.
So the
Yes.
idea is that you've described this morning is that all of the input that you could possibly get will go into the mixer, and what
Yes.
comes out will be the results of hopefully an agreement of everybody, and the product that we get will be from the audit.
Yes, and these audits will add value to Blackman's Parish. That's the key here. That's what we want to do. However, you want to still be mathematical about it, but at the end of the day, I still think there's some room for discussion and input from directors and management. I think that's a big thing because management deals with all this stuff on a daily basis. So having their input is crucial, I think.
And plus, it allows the cooperation that you need to get the work done.
That's another thing too. Yes, that's a big, yep.
So, as you made those comments, it reflected on the fact that prior to you being here, there were no audits being performed.
That's correct.
And so I think that you've done a great job of moving this department forward
Right.
as a one-man operation. I think that the audits that you've produced are of a high quality and of a value to the government. And I think that, as you described this morning, this natural evolution of developing the department is moving in the right direction.
Yes.
And I applaud you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Do we have any other questions? Mr. Blink? One second.
Hold on a second. Okay.
This isn't related to anything that's particularly discussed today, but just, a general question for Mr. Duke and others. My office has been looking into, best practices with the ferries, and we actually looked at the audit results and some of the suggestions in there. Do any of those suggestions have teeth? Is anybody mandated to do what the audits suggest, or is it just advisory in nature? Is there a little background there on that?
Yes, these audits are meant to be recommendations, independent recommendations from an internal auditor. The teeth, as you state, is from the council and management to put these audits in place. The recommendations in place if they believe the cost benefit is there to do so, and if it's going to add value to the parish. But what I do is make recommendations. I use a lot of words. I try not to use the words that you must do this or you should do this. It just doesn't fall right. So I really try to use the word to consider this, and take a look at what I'm trying to do or trying to say. And a lot of my recommendations are based on best practice. And so, therefore, most of the best practice, if they're not in place, it's going to be a good thing for Plaquemines to put it in place if it's not already being done. But it needs to have teeth the recommendations that you agree to needs to have teeth. Either management needs to say, yes, I'm going to put this in place. When I do a follow-up, I go out there and check it to make sure it's in place. Or we need an ordinance or resolution to make sure that it's going to be done.
Any further questions? Mr. Blake?
Randy, I know you do best, behind the scenes, plugging away day after day.
Yes.
And I would like to do another presentation on, presenting the council with what we need to do to get the ferry department, just some best practices with collecting the money, those type of things. I don't go full bore to only electronic billing and that kind of thing and just getting completely away from cash. But would you be okay with being in the council meeting that day? It's not going to be this time, probably next cycle, just to maybe speak for some of the recommendations that's saying, Blink isn't going is far, but where he's going is a good start.
Yeah. I think, I've been through this a lot in my career. I really don't want to get started giving presentations necessarily to the council. If a council member wants to, or if they have any information or want any information, they can come to the committee and ask me, and I'll be happy to go through it with them as I'm doing it with you. My audits, I think, should be self-explanatory. However, if there is a situation now, I'm not totally against giving a presentation to the council. Sometimes it's a good thing, but I don't want to get in a habit of doing it. If there is an audit that the council needs, they believe sincerely needs to do that, then I would not be opposed to doing that. But the ferries audit, I think, and the follow-up audit, to me, are pretty self-explanatory. Get rid of cash, put some controls in place to check the money coming in. And basically, that's it. And also, too, it's losing so much money. I think you all are starting to address that situation. So it's pretty straightforward, I think, what needs to be done with the ferries department. A break-even analysis, and that's something I think I mentioned with my first recommendation, is something that should have been done a while back, or could be done if the port takes over, so that you know what that break even is, so that you can really make a decision on how much money we're going to need in order to at least break even from this situation. And as a going concern, I think my follow-up audit mentioned that it just appears to me that losing $3.5 million is just kind of crazy, but it seems that the parish themselves, the citizens, seem to be okay with that, which I don't understand, because there's definitely got to be another way of doing that. Maybe we could get a federal grant to run the ferries if the port situation doesn't materialize. But losing that kind of money when the parish is in such need it's just crazy. But that's my opinion. But like I said, I don't want to get in the habit of giving presentations to the council, but I am willing to do that if there is, I think, a need. I just don't think the ferries is that much of a need. In fact, I've already given a presentation on the ferries a while back.
Thank you.
Mr. Blink and I talked about it, and the captain should have a log in the wheelhouse and have however many cars come on the ferry each trip.
Absolutely.
And we
yes.
talked about it the last trip we made across. Nobody collected money on the whole ferry. So,
yeah, that's another thing that I proposed in my audit is surprise examinations during that period of time, and nobody seems to be doing those. So I think I'm going to have to do another follow-up audit on the ferries. A lot of this stuff seems like it's going by the wayside, and we're still losing money.
And Mr. Blink, I think that the purpose of the internal auditor is to lay out the groundwork and the path forward to what he believes and has found through his examinations of some things that could be improvements. The administration is a huge part of the implementation of this. And I think that the implementation part from the administration side should use it as a tool to help them operate. Now, in the failure of the administration not implementing or trying to make change to make the operation move smoothly, then I guess it's upon the council to come forward with ordinances that would mandate certain actions. But prior to that, I believe the administration should be given the opportunity to implement those changes in their operational scheme of things. And in the lack of that, then I guess it falls upon this council body to actually put legislation in place to be able to make that happen if that's the will of the body. And so, I mean, as we've done in other audits, I mean, we've adopted policies, for instance, in the port. The port policy, as you know, was adopted and implemented. And I don't know if we've ever gotten the follow-up that the legislative auditor asked to implement, but I know we haven't adopted anything, so I'm assuming that the port administratively has implemented those recommendations from the state legislative auditor to comply with their wishes. So, I mean, that's how it works sometimes, and sometimes you got to do the legislation.
Because I know the captain's log, that's an official document. And
That's right.
it should match up with the money collected. Plus, if the ferry, something happens to it, it sinks. That's the first thing the captain's supposed to grab.
That's another good idea.
He has to have it.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
because you don't know how many cars were on the ferry if it goes down.
That's right.
Mr. Blank,
The legislation will be forthcoming.
thank you. Any other comments or discussion items on this?
Yeah, I'd like to, one other thing, just briefly take a look at the IIA standards real quick. I'm not going to, since it's not on the agenda, it kind of blends into the agenda, but it basically talks about the chief audit executives reporting and communicating to senior management and the board, meaning the council. You know, I take I should be talking to you all about every now and then, not during every committee meeting, but maybe quarterly, talk to you about the audit charter. You know, is the audit charter functioning the way it should? Yes, it is. Do we have independence in the internal audit activity? That's one thing that I try to do very, very hard. That's the reason I work on the outside. I don't go around talking to people a whole lot, except in my work. You know, I meet with people if it's in my work, but I don't go around, I don't have lunch with people. I try to keep things as independent and unbiased in my mind as possible. I've learned over the years, you know, especially when I was a youngster, that the more involved I got with people, the less independent you become and objective. So my independence has evolved over the years, and I find it a lot better to be uninvolved, except for doing my audits and for putting out the reports. It's just the best way to keep things unbiased in my mind, because I have to be independent, objective in nature and in mind in order to put these reports out.
And I agree that you've done that from the very first day you were here, when you were invited to lunch by other parish-wide elected official and you refused to go to lunch. That set the tone for me to understand how you operate, and I'm very appreciative of your independence.
Right. Thank you, sir. So the audit plan and progress against the plan, I think we have discussed that. Resource requirements, I think we're doing okay now. What I would consider at the end of next year, probably, we might want to consider, if we have the money, you know, hiring somebody to help me proof information, help me gather information, something like that.
So are we moving on to item 3?
Well, this is just
Okay, not yet.
This is kind of a blending of things that I just wanted to make sure that we covered. It'll only take a couple of minutes. Results of the activities, I'm going to be discussing that today. And this last one here, management's response to risk. And in my opinion, in my judgment, is it acceptable or is it unacceptable to the organization? And I have done a few audits, and Mr. Blink has pointed out about the ferries audit. I do think there's some unacceptable risk still out there with the ferries, as we all know, you know, especially with the cash and what, you know, a council member has just said about the log. So, and with the port, I think there is still some work to be done with the port, policies and procedures. So, if you take a look at the audits that I've done, let's see here, the employee expense and mileage. That is not a lot of money, but it's still something that we need to keep abreast of and make sure that that information that reimbursement information is accurate. Civil service, the visa, the contracts. So anyway, I don't know, maybe I'm going off on a tangent here, but I just wanted to cover some things that I think that, if there is ever situations in my audit where I don't think management is accepting the risk, then I am going to bring it up to the committee. And then we really do need to put, as Mr. Blink said, some teeth into trying to fix it.
Okay, any further comments on this item? Are you completed, Mr. Duke?
Yes, sir.
Any other comments from anyone on this item? If not, we will move to the next item on the agenda.
Number 3, audits in progress. A, status of the PPG contracts internal audit.
Okay, if you take a look at the screen here, I've done a lot of work. I don't know if you can bring it up, Kim, or not, but I have this audit scheduled to go out for the October 10th, 2019 Audit Committee meeting, providing that I get the responses from management that I need before I put it out. I've done a whole lot of work on this so far. You can take a look at it. I just need to take a look at some more contracts, and I'm going to be focusing a lot on CEAs, and especially the area that we talk about as far as the Cabela Act, where it talks about for any CEA, the AG's opinion says that you have to have a commensurate value for any public money that's being given out for the CEA. And so I'm going to take a look at that. The Cabela test, the three-prong test is there, but that was superseded by the AG test. That basically, you can take a look at that. You don't want to be in a situation where you have a donation. So I'm going to be heavily looking at CEAs to make sure that it doesn't appear that we're donating money. Okay. Is it too closer? I just want to make sure that, on those that we're not doing any donations. That's the key to this Cabela Act. So the contract audit should be discussed during the October meeting. I guess that's basically it.
And you've already drawn all the samples that you need?
Yeah, well, I have a couple of, not quite. I'm still working on that. Not quite.
Any comments or discussion on the contracts internal audit? Hearing none, we'll move to item B.
Status of the timekeeping internal audit.
Okay, the status of this audit is that I'm waiting for management response. It was sent out on July 31st, and I have not received any responses from management as yet. I've given management until August 31st to respond. If management doesn't respond by that time, I'll put the report out. I have to put the report out, and in management response, I'll have to say management did not have a response to it. And we'll discuss this report in the September meeting.
Okay. Any comments or discussion on this item, being in a position to where we are just waiting on a response from the administration to be able to publish?
Yes, sir.
If no comments on this item, we'll move to item C.
Discussion of the leased property internal audit.
That's an audit that I plan on sending a notification letter to management within the next week and hopefully get started on that audit. It's going to be a big audit, leased property. I think it's an important audit to see where we stand with the fair market value of the rates we're being charged for leased property. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I did one of those for Jefferson Parish. It's not an easy audit to do. It takes a while to do it, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a good audit for us to do.
So will this include buildings like auditoriums and rental fees and other?
Anything to do with leases. Yes, sir.
Will the short-term rental though be included in that? Since
Yes, if we're getting rental from it, I'm going to include that's going to be in the population. Now the issue here now is that I received a master list of all contracts and agreements from Mr. Rennie. Now I'm going to take my sample from that. If it has everything in it, which he thinks it does, then we'll be okay.
Well, that's a major accomplishment, just the fact that all of that in
Yes.
one location.
Yes.
I'm not sure it's located.
Well, it's not. No, sir. We don't. That's a situation we'll discuss in September.
Okay, but at least you have a list,
Yes, sir.
universe that's supposed to exist with leases
Yep.
and buildings. Well, any other comments on item C? Hearing none? If there's no further business, we'll move to item 4.
Approval of the minutes from the June 13th, 2019 meeting.
We have a motion to accept the minutes from June the 13th.
Motion.
Mr. Konovich, is there a second? Second by Ms. Newberry. Is there any discussion on the adoption of the June 13, 2019 minutes for that meeting? Hearing none, then the machine is open. And the minutes are adopted 3-0. No further business to be for the audit committee today. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Konovich, second by Ms. Newberry, and the machine is open for the adjournment. And it's a 3-0 vote. The adjournment is at 10:05 a.m. Thank you all for coming, and we will see you next time.